We'll go ahead and get started, if you may. Before we do the pledge, Bill's here, and we're gonna do some songs.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
You ready?
I'm old enough to remember when September was when the World Series sort of started. Now it's October anymore, but I thought we'd do Take Me Out to the Ball Game.
Good.
Join me in that.
And I'll get away from the microphone so I won't.
You're not leading?
No, you are.
Sorry, I wasn't quite ready.
That's okay.
Take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the crowd. Just buy me some peanuts and cracker jack. I don't care if I ever get back. Please root for the Hokies. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the Hokies.
All right. And we have a very important day coming up in our memory on Saturday. So Bill picked out a song for us to sing in remembrance of 9/11. So Bill.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home sweet home.
Thanks, Bill. Pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And remembering our mission statement, or our 3 keys, Kiwanis helps kids. Kiwanis is a youth-oriented service organization, and Kiwanis partners with Riley Hospital for Children. So invocation today, Jim?
Yes. Just wanted, with 9/11 coming up on Saturday, I just want to remind you that freedom is not free. And we need to thank all the first responders in our community for their service. And think about all the first responders that did not think of their own safety when they ran in to that burning building. Loving God, thank you for the gift of the Kiwanis community. Continue to reveal yourself to us as we fellowship with others. Help us to recognize our gifts and talents so that we may use them to serve one another and glorify your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you. I know everybody probably has a story about 9/11 and that day and living through that. I was up in Chicago at some grievance meetings in my labor role, and I remember I was sitting in a restaurant, and it was a lobby restaurant of this hotel, and I'm sitting in the back of the restaurant. I'm looking up, and there's a bar up front with a big screen TV, and everybody's looking at this TV, and I get up and walk over there to see what's going on, just in time for it to hit the one that hit the second building. So it was a horrific, tragic day, And I'm sure we were talking earlier about, 20 years from now, how will they teach that day to our kids and grandkids in schools? Hopefully they do a good job in remembering those that perished that day. I remember walking out of that hotel, and it was right on the northeast corner of O'Hare Airport. And if any of you ever been at O'Hare Airport and you didn't see a plane take off, that was amazing. It was amazing. It was just empty. And so it really did hit a lesson that day. So we all need to remember that this year, especially the 20-year anniversary of that. I think Jerry and Conrad were the official greeters today, but we had a whole bunch back there, so that's great. So thank everybody for helping out. And we do have some openings for everybody on the invocators and greeters sheet and with the speaker sheets. So I'm going to pass these around to make sure everybody gets an opportunity to fill them out. So here, we'll start with you, Mark. Thanks for being here. So let's get those things all filled out so we can, so Caleb doesn't have to worry about it after 3 more weeks. Announcements. Let's see, December 16th at the Beef House. Is there anybody else that didn't get signed up that wants to go? Because I'm going to call there and make the reservations clear, and we'll do that. So, who's happy today? Anybody? Robin?
Well,
you've got a guest.
I'll be unhappy if I don't get a chance to introduce guests.
Right.
I have my wife, Gail Pebworth, here with me.
Thanks, Gail. Nice to see you again. And it's always great to have the guests here. Dave, you've got a guest and a speaker? Or?
Yes. I have a guest who is not my wife.
Okay.
I'm very fortunate in that area. But I'd like to introduce Helen Hudson, who is co-president of the Montgomery County League of Women Voters, who works closely with our speakers organization.
Good.
Today, so.
Okay, Helen, welcome. Glad to have you here. So, yeah, if there's anybody that does want to go to that December 16th thing, let me know. Jim, you're happy?
I'm happy. I'm just happy.
Good.
For our speakers and for Pam's
Pam's
promise.
promise this week. Jerry.
My wife Jolene made it back safely from Mexico last night, and so it's nice to have her back. And for Pam's promise, and just for the absolutely gorgeous weather we've had the last couple of days.
Yeah, it's been very, very nice. It was very tough because Jerry was batching it this past week, and his wife's down in Mexico, and of course has to go through all the stuff to get back here, all the testing and everything, and she had to go through an earthquake. So, but she got back last night?
Yeah.
Good. And everybody's safe, so glad to hear that. Chuck?
I've got one for the Masonic Temple. The roof is now on, the new roof.
All right.
And I got one in honor of Dennis Coons, who brought me a big stack of license plates.
Oh, wow, great. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
We're going on the Montgomery County Historical Society trip. We're leaving on Saturday, according to Jim. Andy said he already left.
Oh, okay.
And we're going to Maine and Cape Cod.
Oh, wow.
So I'll see you in 2
That'll be
weeks.
cool. Wow, good. Dennis?
Yeah, I got a couple $2. I better be happy today. Of course, Purdue won this last weekend, and it's my 43rd wedding anniversary, so I'm happy
Wow.
about that.
Well, congratulations. And I'll throw in a buck for Pam's promise. Anybody else? Anybody else? Okay, we'll go on. Volunteer opportunities. We do need people to help with unloading the food truck, and I know a bunch of people were yelling at me that they would be there, and I think Jerry said, who else? Jim?
I signed up online, so.
Conrad, and myself, and that'll probably be all we need, because I heard there's only gonna be 2 pallets, which is
Just
nice.
2 last week, or last month.
Yeah, was there 2 or, whatever. She said there wasn't gonna be much, so that's good. So we'll be unloading the truck tomorrow at 9 a.m. at the Nourish program. The next satellite club meeting will be
Hopefully next week.
next Thursday.
Francis Mount, 5:30 to 6:30 on Thursday.
Okay. At Francis and Mount, okay. Pop can tabs, I didn't see any up here today, but I know you all brought a bunch last week. We really appreciate it. I think we did count we did get from the Lafayette Harrison Club, we got 28,800 tabs that they brought down for us. The Southmont Key Club brought the other day 33,670 tabs. So they were busy working on it. All that goes to Ronald McDonald House at Riley. So if you have any more, keep bringing them. We are going to take them down to the Riley Kids Committee this next Tuesday. But if you have any more, continue to bring them. We're going to continue collecting them. So my wife doesn't know that yet, but you know, we may not get it out of the garage.
The buggy has to go too.
Yeah, okay, yeah, the buggy. But so far, we have, drum roll please, 548,003 tabs.
And 3 tabs?
Well, the 3 are from Don.
Oh.
You know, he continues to, yeah. So 548,003 tabs to go to Ronald McDonald House. That was fantastic. Until I got the email from another club. And they told me they have 600 pounds of them, which equates to about 960,000 tabs. So they're bringing all of those down too. So we got to get them from there then down to the Ronald McDonald House. So we'll be doing that next Tuesday. So we're gonna have a lot of fun with that. Speaking of Riley, of course, we are again collecting for the Kiwanis Comfort Cart. They have had to put off some of their, the opening of the maternal neonatal medicine portion of the building. They had to put that off because of the COVID thing right now. They didn't want to open it and have some issues with it right away. I think at this point, they're talking late November, early December to get that thing open. It's ready to go. They had not a groundbreaking, but they had a ribbon cutting ceremony yesterday down there to open up that center. So it's really, really great that thing's opened up. Hopefully it'll be able to put it to good use here shortly. So that'll be going on. So, but we are collecting for the comfort cart, and we're collecting for the food pantry, the Riley Food Pantry. So again, those, anything you can do with those, we appreciate it. We also need Operation Toy Box. We need some more volunteers to help with that. We'll be putting out a lot of letters, going to different businesses and everything, trying to get some donations of toys or money so we can purchase toys. So we hopefully get that thing working and have a bunch of toys so that as the Operation Toy Box has said for years, to make sure that there's a present under the tree for every child that needs one, you know. So we want to continue doing that. Just another one you'll see around September is National Suicide Prevention Month. So I know some of the groups are asking for donations for that. So if you see that, drop a dime, drop $1, or drop a $100 bill, whatever. Birthdays, no Kiwanian birthdays this week. Things to do in Montgomery County. Tomorrow night is the Pike Place Community Concert and Food Festival, and I think that's Hoosier Heartland and and Rotary again. So if you get your chance, wear your Kiwanis shirt. You know, if you go down there. The Waynetown Fish Fry is today through Saturday, and I've heard that that's been going on for 1,000,000 years, and it's one of the biggest events around from what they've been promoting. So Saturday, September 11th is Walnut Township Community Day in New Ross.
That's right.
So you know, go visit, check it out.
I'll be handing out ice cream between 1 and 4.
Between 1 and 4, okay. Terry, do you hear that? Jim's giving out ice cream?
Those little Dixie cups?
Hey, I got 2 hands. And,
Oh, I'm sorry.
and,
I was going the wrong way.
okay, national days. Today is Care Bears Share Your Care Day. So I thought you'd all like to know that, okay? It's International Sudoku Day. And it's National Wiener Schnitzel Day. And it's Teddy Bear Day. So important days today. We missed yesterday, and yesterday was National Iguana Awareness Day. So I'm sure you were all aware that it was National Iguana Awareness Day. And tomorrow, guys, don't expect anything big for dinner, because tomorrow is National TV Dinner Day. So, that's about all we have going on. Anything else anybody else have anything for the club? Okay. Dave Long is our speaker coordinator for this month. So Dave is going to come on up and introduce our speaker today.
How many folks here are familiar with Common Cause? A few hands, and there's a few hands that are now. Well, good, because you're going to learn about Common Cause today. And it's really a very important organization that has been working for years, and unfortunately a lot of times they seem to be working in the background. And I think in recent years they've come to light a lot more, they've got a lot more publicity, they've got a lot more interest in a lot of the things they do. So for those of you who aren't familiar, you're going to learn today. And I'd like to welcome Julia Vaughn from Common Cause, and she's going to explain a little bit about what they do and how important a lot of the things do that affect us day to day that we don't even realize. Julia?
Well, thank you so much, Dave, and it's really a pleasure to be here with you. I'll leave that where it's at. This is not my first time to present to the Kiwanis Club, so thank you for having me back. Apparently I didn't do too badly several years ago. Always a pleasure to see my good friend Gail Pebworth, folks from the League of Women Voters here who do great work. So it's my pleasure to speak to you this afternoon. Now, Dave did actually, when he approached me about speaking, he had mentioned another issue, which I do have one slide on, Dave, but I could not resist. The timing is such that I really needed to focus my remarks on redistricting, because this only happens once a decade, folks, and it's getting ready to happen next week here in Indiana. So, could not risk the opportunity. Are you ready for redistricting? You better be, because it is going to happen. So briefly, just if you aren't familiar with Common Cause Indiana, who we are, a little bit about what we do. We were founded back in 1970 by John Gardner. We are the first grassroots citizens lobbying organization ever organized. A lot of people think Ralph Nader and Public Citizen were the first. They were founded in 1970, but actually about 6 months after Common Cause. So we're going to claim that first status. John Gardner's a really interesting guy, had a long career in both public and private service, served as the only Republican in the administration of Lyndon Johnson. So that's an interesting fact. Always took a very bipartisan approach to everything he did. Left the Johnson administration about 2 years into his term because he was adamantly opposed to the war in Vietnam, and so as that continued to escalate, he felt he could not continue to serve in the Johnson administration. did a lot of different things, but in 1970 founded Common Cause, and our mission is to uphold the core values of American democracy. And obviously with that, we have a heavy emphasis on voting rights. We work on lobbying and legislative ethics, campaign finance reform, open government, elections, redistricting. And we do our work in a number of different ways. A lot is educating, just going out, talking to groups like this all across the state about issues of concern. We also organize people around those issues. We do lobby the Indiana General Assembly. I've been a registered lobbyist since 1986 now, so been at it a while. And we do litigate when necessary. We have taken the state to court over issues, and I'm proud to tell you that we usually win those cases. Most recently, we sued the state over its plans to purge voters from the voting rolls without following federal law. Federal law requires notice to be sent to the voter and a waiting period to be followed before they can be removed. And the state was going to allow counties to ignore those provisions in federal law. So we went to court and got it stopped. They now have to follow federal law when they work to maintain the voting rolls in our state. I invite you to learn more about the organization. You can go to our website, commoncause.org. And if you're so moved, please become a member. We are an organization, again, that does grassroots lobbying, so we have strength in the number of members that we have. We're also active on social media. I'd invite you to follow us on both Facebook and Twitter at Common Cause Indiana. Let's get into the basics of redistricting. I'm sure you guys are up to speed on this, but sometimes people have some questions. You know that we're doing it every 10 years after the decennial census because we now know how many people are in the United States, how many people live in Indiana, how many people in Montgomery County, Crawfordsville. So what we have to do is to respect the principle of one person, one vote, that constitutional principle. We have to rebalance our political districts because, you know, people die, babies are born, they move. Our population is constantly in flux. So over the past decade, districts have become uneven in terms of population. So, you know, a district that has 60,000 people versus a district that has 80,000 people, the people in the smaller district are getting more representation. So the whole idea behind this redistricting is to even those districts out so that they're relatively equal in population. And of course we do this from Congress all the way down to school boards. So it is a process that is starting now, but will continue at various levels of government over the next several years. The problem with redistricting, at least for congressional and state legislative lines, is that the job falls to exactly the wrong people. The people who are most interested in the outcome of redistricting get to completely control it. So what in the world could go wrong with that, right? And let me make clear that right now in Indiana, the situation is totally controlled by Republicans, and I think that's a problem. But it would be the same problem if it was totally controlled by Democrats. There are no angels when it comes to redistricting. Republicans and Democrats both use it because it is the most effective way to predetermine the outcomes of elections. So, you know, this is not a Republican problem, it's not a Democrat problem, it is an incumbent problem. And the party that is in control is going to use redistricting to keep that control. It's just that simple. So another thing that is problematic, and you know what we like to say about this is when you have legislative control of redistricting, it really allows representatives to pick their voters instead of having voters pick their representatives during elections. So it creates problems. And the other thing that really leads to a free-for-all is there are very few statutory requirements in Indiana, very few rules that the legislature has to follow when it comes to redistricting. The only statutory requirements are equal population, respect for the Voting Rights Act. You have to be careful when you're carving up minority voters because the Voting Rights Act has some very specific things to say about how that can be done. You can't use redistricting to negate the political power of minority voters. That's racial gerrymandering, and unfortunately our country has a long history of that practice. And so the only other requirement, the first two are federal and state requirements. Contiguity is a state requirement. That means that a district has to be connected at all points. So that's the only thing in state and federal law that legislators have to keep in mind when they redistrict. Keep in mind that the Supreme Court has said racial gerrymandering is unconstitutional. So they will take cases that challenge districts based on racial discrimination, but they have said that partisan gerrymandering can't be litigated. They've said it's a political problem, it's not a legal problem, so there's really nothing that can be done in federal courts about partisan gerrymandering. Now, there are a few state courts that have ruled that maps are illegal partisan gerrymanders. I wouldn't expect that to happen here in Indiana, but there is some precedent for it. Now, the process is also extremely important with redistricting. It's important that it be open and transparent, because if it's not, if it's all done clandestinely behind closed doors, then the public's gonna wonder what's going on, right? Anytime you do anything in secret, you're gonna create suspicion. And there needs to be opportunities for the public to engage, because these are our districts, right? These are our communities that are being divided up, so we need to have a say in how that happens. So now my organization, along with the League of Women Voters and 23 other organizations, we worked really hard to reform redistricting since 2015. We had both Republican and Democrat support in the State House to do this. Unfortunately, not enough support, because our efforts to create a citizens commission, which would take charge of redistricting, as well as to put some more statutory criteria in state law, those efforts unfortunately were not successful. Now, it's frustrating because efforts to reform redistricting have really been taken off like wildfire around the country. We're not the only state that has been gerrymandered and is showing problems because of it. The problem is that here in Indiana, the only way to reform redistricting is to get a law passed through the General Assembly. So the people who benefit the most from redistricting or from gerrymandering would have to pass laws stopping it. You know, it's a tall order. The states that have managed to reform redistricting, they all have one thing in common, and that is that their constitutions allow for ballot initiatives. You know, they have a process where citizens can go out, collect a requisite number of signatures, and get law changes put on the ballot. Voters get to vote on it directly. We don't have that option in Indiana. So unfortunately, the road to reform is much harder here. Our neighbors to the north, Michigan, they passed a significant redistricting reform through a ballot initiative a couple of years ago. Our neighbors to the east, Ohio, not quite as significant a reform as Michigan, but they also passed reform through ballot initiatives. So again, you know, states are doing this, but unfortunately through an option that is not available to us here in Indiana. I like this graphic because I think it does a really good job. You know, a picture will say 1,000 words. You know, over here are 50 people. We've got 60 who are blue voters, 40 who are red. So in the first, number one, that would be proportional representation. Proportional representation is the concept that you would have your partisan division of districts pretty well reflect the vote totals in your state. So that would break down, if you've got 60% blue to 40% red, the blues would get 3 districts and the reds would get 2. Number 2, I think, is a good representation of what we got here in Indiana currently. If you look at our districts, most of them look relatively compact, pretty regularly shaped. You would say, I don't see any little snaky gerrymanders or weird looking districts that are like obviously, there's something suspicious going on. This district, or this graphic, does a really good job of showing that you can have nice regular shaped districts, but carve them up so that it's really unfair. The group that should only be entitled to 60% has gotten 100% of the districts under this rendering, number 2, but it doesn't look suspicious, right? If you've been trained to think that you can see with your eyes a gerrymander. And then number 3 is sort of the more common, what we understand as gerrymandering. If it's got a funny shape, then it must be an obvious gerrymander. That's not necessarily true. Sometimes there are reasons why a district would have a funny shape, but certainly there are plenty of examples of meandering districts that meander for political purposes, not any type of public interest. So in 2021, we do this every 10 years, and as I was telling Dave, I'm such an old timer that this is actually going to be my 3rd round of redistricting. I was around working for Common Cause in 2001, 2011. So in 2021, my 3rd go around, I might actually understand it this time because it is complicated. So it's the same, it's the same every 10 years, but different largely because of the pandemic. And the real catalyst for all the delays this year was the census. It got very pushed back last year, mainly because of challenges trying to count everybody in the country during a pandemic. But there were also a number of different lawsuits filed against the Department of Commerce that the Census Bureau is actually part of. So the end result of that was when the Census Bureau would normally be delivering census data to states in February, it didn't come out until August 16th. So our legislature, it is a part-time legislature. This year was a long session, but the long session has to end by April 29th. So obviously if they didn't get census data until August, they were going to have a really hard time drawing maps by April 29th. So the process was pushed back. They are not actually doing a special session. They actually adjourned the recessed the regular session a week early. So they have sort of this week of days banked, and they're going to come back next week and start the redistricting process. So like 2021, one party is in control of the process. Republicans completely controlled the redistricting back in 2011. That is the same scenario this year. Wanted to talk briefly, I mentioned that the coalition we formed with the League of Women Voters of Indiana, All In for Democracy, has worked really hard to reform redistricting since 2015 to pass a law through the legislature. Unfortunately, we weren't successful. So when we regrouped last summer, we thought, redistricting is coming. What are we going to do to impact the process? So we said, well, if the General Assembly won't reform redistricting, then we'll just show them how it's done. So we created our own Indiana Citizens Redistricting Commission, and we created a parallel process. So the Citizens Redistricting Commission has really been an enjoyable thing to work on. We had a lot of interest. Late last year, we put out the call for applications. We said we're looking for 9 people, 3 Republicans, 3 Democrats, and 3 people who are neither Republican nor Democrat. And we want you to sit on this Citizens Redistricting Commission. We had no idea what kind of response we would get, but we got a very good response. About 300 people raised their hand and said, yeah, this is something I'd like to spend several months of my life doing next year. So we put a great team together. They range in age from 86 to 19. We have a former mayor of LaPorte, Indiana. We have a former president of the Indiana Chamber of Commerce, former city councilman from Fort Wayne, Indiana, a student from Indiana University, a guy who is a construction project manager from Hammond. We wanted a group of people who were all politically engaged. All of these people are activists in their community, but they won't be running in the districts that they are thinking about drawing, right? There's that separation. There is no conflict of interest. And that's who we think needs to be in charge of redistricting. A diverse, multi-partisan group that is really representative of Indiana voters, and again, that has no direct conflict of interest with the drawing of political districts. So this group, we held 10 virtual public meetings that more than 1,000 people participated in, and we wanted really two kinds of information from the public. We wanted to hear, what criteria do you think is important in the drawing of districts? Should we draw districts that are geographically compact? Should we try to draw districts that don't favor one party over the other? Should we draw the maps around the home addresses of incumbents? Or should we not worry about that? Should we just draw the districts? So we got a lot of input from people. The two top things we heard were, we don't like districts that aren't competitive. There are too many districts in Indiana that are lopsided. They favor one party very heavily over the other. We can't hold those legislators accountable because they don't have to listen to us. You know, if they're guaranteed re-election simply because they're a Republican or a Democrat, then they don't have to listen to voters. And we heard over and over again examples of that. We also heard crazy examples of communities that are divided for no good reason. For example, Greencastle, Indiana, right? Home of DePauw University, very similar to Crawfordsville. For some reason, I always kind of get Greencastle and Crawfordsville confused. I'm sorry, I don't know why I do. But they seem similar to me. It is divided into two state Senate districts. The line goes right down Main Street. So if you live on the east side of Main Street, you're in this Senate district. If you live on the west side of Main Street, a town of 10,000. A state Senate district has about 130,000 people in it. So all of Greencastle would easily fit into one district. So again, example of that. People don't want it, they want their communities kept whole. So that's the first part of our project. We wanted to demonstrate that you can get together a group of citizens and they can lead this public conversation, and they will have much more credibility than if legislators, politicians lead this conversation. So the Citizens Redistricting Commission, this parallel process. And then we have also created a public mapping competition. I would encourage you to go to this URL, and I can share it with you if you don't have time or anything to jot it down with. But we have developed easy-to-use mapping software, and we give you all of the census and demographic data that you need. And we're hosting a competition. We're putting up real prize money for the districts that we think will best serve communities and voters. So we've got a prize of $1,000 for the best congressional map, prize of $2,000 for the best state Senate map, and $3,000 for the best state House map. So I would encourage you to check it out. The winning maps will be used as the standard by which to judge the maps that our legislature comes up with. And we think that maps drawn by citizens with no direct interest in the outcome will have more competitive districts. They'll have fewer cities and counties divided into multiple districts. They will be more oriented towards the needs of Hoosiers than the needs of politicians, and that's what we need here in Indiana. So coming up next week, September 14th, The House Elections Committee is going to release online the congressional and state House of Representatives maps that they are proposing for the next decade. The next day, and the next day after that, the 15th and the 16th, the committee will meet at the State House in Indianapolis to take public testimony. On September 20th, the committee will come back to Indianapolis to amend those proposals, possibly, and pass them out of committee. On the 22nd and the 23rd, they would be before the full House of Representatives. On the second reading, they can be amended, third readings, final vote. So then we go around and do it again in the Senate. On the 21st of September, the Senate maps will be released online. On the 27th, there will be a committee hearing to take public testimony. That vote will take place in committee on the 28th. Then September 30th, October 1st will be floor action on the Senate side. And by October 2nd, our new districts should be on their way to the governor. So districts that are going to largely determine the outcome of elections in our state for a decade will fly through the legislative process in 17 days. We don't think that's enough time for Hoosiers to really know what's in those districts, figure out how they're going to impact our communities, and give that feedback to legislators. So here's what you can do. If you're around next week, I strongly encourage you to show up at those hearings on the 16th and the 20th. We will be holding a rally, the All In for Democracy Coalition. Unfortunately, we can't give you too many details because the legislature has not yet told us what time these hearings are going to be starting next Thursday. But we'll be updating our social media as soon as we find that out. We have reserved the Washington Street steps for noon. Exciting detail for the rally on the 16th. Carrie Newcomer, don't know if you're familiar with her. She's an incredible Indiana singer-songwriter. She is going to perform at the rally on September 16th, so that's reason enough to show up. I would ask you to contact the legislative leadership. Speaker Houston, President Pro Tem Bray, and the committee chairs, who are Senator John Ford from Terre Haute and Representative Tim Wesco from St. Joe County. And the message is that Hoosiers need an open and transparent process for redistricting, and that's not what we're being given. We need more than 2 weeks. We're also asking legislators to follow the recommendations in the report that the Citizens Redistricting Commission sent to the legislature. I was telling you about the need for more competition, less dividing of communities around the state. And I would strongly urge you to also contact your local legislators, Representative Tim Brown, Senator Phil Boots. They've both been around a long time, have a lot of credibility within their caucuses, and they really need to hear from citizens on this issue. Neither of them are directly involved on either elections committees, but again, they're folks who have been around, have lots of seniority, and they definitely need to hear what they think. Now, this is the only one slide on this. When Dave contacted me, he had asked about this, so I did want to mention it. I don't know if you saw the Indy Star article last month. The gist of it was basically we've got a part-time legislature, but they make full-time pay. Not a big revelation. Again, I've been around the State House a really long time, but I do think that most citizens don't recognize, they hear, oh, we've got a part-time legislature, they're members of our community, they just do this, as sort of a part-time gig out of the goodness of their heart. That's true for some of those folks, but it is a pretty lucrative part-time job. The average legislator makes $65,600. There are several legislators who make more than that. If you're part of leadership, you're going to get some extra money. But that's the average. And so, again, this is a part-time job. The average Hoosier who is working a full-time job makes just $56,300. Being in the legislature is also makes you eligible for very generous benefits that most part-time workers in Indiana do not get. For example, they get pensions and health insurance, again, for part-time work. They get a per diem year-round, a daily per diem, even when the legislature is not in session. And everybody gets the same per diem. When I was quoted in this article, my comment was, well, you know, I have a problem with this system because it's disingenuous. And I think it's really disingenuous because everybody gets the same per diem, regardless of whether, you know, you have to stay overnight in Indianapolis and pay for a hotel room. So people who, you know, go back and sleep in their own bed at night get the same per diem as people who have to spend that per diem on lodging and food and stuff like that. So it's not really fair. And the real problem, I think, with having a part-time legislature is we don't spend much money on the legislature itself. And we don't have much staff at all for the legislature. And that means that they are dependent on lobbyists for information. And, you know, lobbyists aren't going to give you the unvarnished truth, right? They give you their side of the story. And so there's nothing like the Congressional Budget Agency or, you know, the Government Accounting Office that does nonpartisan and unbiased research for our Congress. We don't have anything like that at the Indiana State House. So just a little bit on that, but because Dave had expressed interest, I did want to mention it. The bad thing is, while I think a full-time legislature would benefit Indiana citizens, I can tell you that there is absolutely no appetite for that within the General Assembly. You know, they got a good gig going, and they know that. So I would not expect anybody to make any type of movement to change, and I think you would have to actually change our Constitution to happen. But I know it was an eye-opening story for a lot of folks. So thank you for your time. I hope I haven't gone too far over. I did have a lot to share. So very happy to answer any questions if we have time to do that. Thank you again.
You mentioned that this will be your third go-round. How does this compare, the atmosphere this year compared to the other two times?
Well, yeah, I do that again. 2001 was very different from the other two times because Democrats were in control of the Indiana House of Representatives in those days. And so you actually had push and pull between the two parties. And the outcome that year was that, you know, they had a gentleman's agreement. So the Democrats were in control of the House, so the Republicans would look the other way while they gerrymandered their districts. And then the Republicans were in control of the Senate, so again, the House would look the other way as they would gerrymander their own seats. But when it came to Congress, right, both sides wanted a piece of that action. So we actually ended up that year with congressional districts that were far more competitive. We actually had, you know, we have 9 congressional seats. From 2001 to 2011, the 2nd congressional district and the 9th congressional district, extremely competitive. Every 2 years, it was a real dogfight to see who was going to end up the winner. So that is the big, big difference. We actually had two-party government back in 2001. It's still ugly. I mean, you know, it is incredibly self-serving. You know, it was a bipartisan gerrymander back in 2001, but the end result was at least congressional maps that weren't really slanted towards one side. There are very strong similarities between 2011 and 2021 because we have the same, you know, one-party control of the State House. So I'll tell you the big difference, though, between 2011 and 2021 is public engagement. Over the past decade, I mean, you know, 10 years ago, I wouldn't be standing here talking to you about redistricting because none of you would have cared about it. But over the past decade, the light bulb has gone off in a lot of people's minds, and they now understand how significant this issue is. So that is the big change from 10 years ago much more public engagement in the issue, people really standing up and demanding fair districts. The sad thing is, you know, the political scenario we face, they don't really have to listen to the citizens. So that's why we got to really raise our voice loudly. Yes, sir.
How did Michigan and Ohio come about with getting a ballot initiative in place, and Indiana, we couldn't do it here?
It goes back to the days of their constitution. You know, when they wrote their constitution, they allowed for more direct democracy, things like ballot initiatives, and the, you know, writers of the Indiana Constitution, for whatever reason, chose not to do that. But the Michigan effort was truly grassroots. There's a woman named Katie Fahey, and she was just, you know, one of those everyday citizens who just got kind of fed up. She used social media to reach out to people. I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of signatures it requires up in Michigan, but it's that kind of an effort. And she went out and got it done. There's a really good documentary film called Slay the Dragon about the Michigan experience, the ballot initiative, the reform that they put in place. The key thing about redistricting commissions is how you pick the members. And in Michigan, it's totally random. They're literally, the Michigan Secretary of State sent letters out to like every 5th registered voter saying, would you like to do this? And, you know, invited people to sign up. So we'll see how it, you know, works, how it results. But I guess the bigger takeaway is there's a much easier road to reform in those states that don't have to go through the legislature. Well, thank you for those great questions. And again, thank you for allowing me to be here today. So great to see you.
Thank you. Very interesting. It's like trying to figure out that map, though. I was sitting or playing around with that, you know, and looking at the congressional one, and it was 748,000, I think, was the number. And you go to Marion County, you're over that already, so you're going to have to separate some of that. So,
yeah, and the key decision is, where is that line going to fall?
Right,
yeah.
Right. So it is interesting, and play with it. You know, if you get a chance, just sit down and play with that thing a little. You got
I was going to do that after you get done.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, well.
Okay.
Come on.
Go ahead. We'll get a picture, and then we'll do the other thing.
This is exciting.
Yeah. Smile.
Nice smile.
Good.
There we go. Thank you.
Okay.
Now I have a set.
See? We figured your old one would have worn out by now.
No, the logo's crisp and everything.
Okay. Now we do have a job for you, though.
Okay.
Okay?
I picked the raffle.
Let's see. Where's the speed jar? Oh, there it is, back here. How much money do we have today?
This may be no more random.
I think a little jar. Yeah, this is a little
I
bit
have
more.
no interest in this whatsoever.
Okay.
Well, the per diem's not good.
Okay. We have our marble game that we sell tickets for, and it's kind of a split pot thing, so see if you can draw out a number, and we'll see who has that winning number.
The whole number?
Yeah.
502825.
825, who has that one?
Byron.
All right, Byron gets to come up again. Now, Byron draws out the white marble. There's a white marble in there, see? He draws out the white marble in this pot, which today would be
Do you want it? No, that's fine.
$681. $29 today?
681.
681. So, get the white one. Oh, he's mixing them up.
Third time in trouble.
Oh, it's a red one again. Okay, so it's still moving up, and that's good to see. We're gonna have a whole bunch in there by the time we get the white marble taken out, so. Anything else to come up for the club? Okay. Positive thought of the day. In every day, there are 1,440 minutes. That means we have 1,440 daily opportunities to make a positive impact. So let's keep doing that. Thank you all very much. Meeting's adjourned.